Welcome to another episode of Washington in Focus. I'm Carlene Johnson, and joining me today is TJ Martinell, our investigative reporter for the Center Square here in Washington State. And we have been talking for several weeks now about attacks on signature gatherers for Let's Go Washington's two current initiative campaigns, one to restore parental rights and the other to basically protect girls in sports. There have been, I think by my count to date, TJ, well over 40 documented attacks, assaults, intimidation, harassment on these signature gatherers. But you reported this week on a story that I found to be, well, disturbing, fascinating, all in the same. But the Snohomish Police Department telling people, don't call 911 in response to initiative signature gatherers operating outside stores. We've seen them at Walmart's, Fred Meyer's, Safeways. Tell me what you found out through your public records documents, TJ, and some of the stuff that might really surprise us.
Yeah, so the signature gathering started in late September, and then days later, we're talking like within a week, the Snohomish Police Department put out a statement on Facebook saying, stop calling 911 to report signature gatherers on these private properties, because obviously they're setting up at places like Safeway and Fred Meyer. And they just said, we've given these stores these steps if they want to remove them, what they need to do if that's what they want to do, but stop calling our emergency line. So I filed the records request, and what was interesting, I think it's worth stating, a lot of these calls went to their non-emergency number, and it's automated. And so I got a transcript, but they will then put them in, after dialing the non-emergency number, they get directed back to the emergency number, which is kind of interesting. And there was a common thread of what they were saying. The narrative was, a lot of it was people who were not store employees. They were customers, or they were people just reporting, they're reporting on behalf of the store and claiming that the store had asked them to leave and they weren't leaving. So they were reporting what they claimed to be trespassing on Safeway or Fred Meyer's property. And they kept saying that the police would not remove these people. Well, what's interesting is that one of the transcripts I got from these calls is that the Snohomish Police Department has been advised by the prosecutor's office to not arrest these people or trespass them. And the reason why is because there's certain laws and there's been certain court rulings that protect their ability to be on these properties. And Fred Meyer and Safeway can go through the process. I'm not sure what the process is. I'm guessing that they basically would not be able to have anything outside their front doors or the exits, like Girl Scouts or whatever. There's been apparently court rulings where it's saying, if you're going to act as a public place for certain groups, you cannot discriminate. As long as they're following the law and as long as they're not engaging in criminal behavior, they can collect signatures. What was really disturbing is how when the callers were talking, because I have all these calls are all recorded, so I got to listen to them, and people were saying, they do the whole trespassing thing, but then the caller would say, well, are they harming anybody? Are they doing anything illegal, whatever? And they would kind of pause and say, well, no, but it's hate speech, or it's racist, or it's anti-trans, or this person's pushing hate, or something like that. And it's very unnerving to have people call the police in response to someone engaging in the democratic process in our state. And it really makes you wonder how much, when people use the term hate speech, there is no legal definition of hate speech. What's shocking, though, is I found out there is in our state a definition of a bias incident, which is insanely disturbing, because we're talking about protected speech and activity. And the government's saying, oh, well, certain types of behavior, it's not illegal, but we don't like it. Well, tough break, man. I don't know what to tell you. You're the government. It's not your job to decide what's hate and what's not. Your job is to enforce laws. And the only thing that you can separate is what's legal from what's illegal. You don't get to say we prefer this type of speech, even though they often times do. So it's kind of spilling over. And then the Attorney General's office has set up this hate bias incident hotline. which may also produce some records requests that I've got. And I think what we're witnessing is people not understanding that the different perspectives and different political opinions are not illegal.
Right. So so you've got in some cases store employees calling saying, their very presence of these folks gathering signatures because it's going to keep boys out of girls' sports. They must be transphobic, and that makes me feel uncomfortable. And I have a right to not feel uncomfortable. And so you police officers should come here and remove them for the property or arrest them because it makes me feel a certain way. I mean, that sounds like from reading your article, what some of the people were contending when they made these 911 calls.
I gotta say, I would, if I was a Snohomish police officer, I would say, show me your Facebook social media post from 2020 when the defund the police thing was all the rave. Like, great, now you need us. Like, how many of these people were screaming defund the police and, all cops are blank? How many of those people are the same people who were saying that, 4 or 5 years ago when the riots were going on in 2020? Again, if I was a police officer, I'd be asking this question because it's like, okay, so you don't like us, but when people are engaging political speech you don't like, suddenly we're needed again, I think that even if there's an alternative actual hotline run by the state's top prosecutor, mind you, they get to call or report this stuff. Even if that's an alternative, it's still disturbing that you are reporting people for engaging in legally protected First Amendment activities to the government. And and even if it's not doing anything to violate rights outright, it's leading to a culture where people think that they have a right to, as we're seeing with the initiatives, engage in violence against political opponents, and that you're justified. Yeah, because they're hateful, they're violent rhetoric, all this other stuff that's used to justify in people's minds. I have a right to use violence against people that I don't like or I don't agree with. And even if they go to jail, that's nice. That's still undermining our democratic process. And this is after the Secretary of State put out a video saying that this stuff is illegal. And what's funny is he said, call the police, right? And then you have that video from Covington where the officer was arresting somebody just for show, right? So
the incident that you and I discussed this week too, that was one of the more recent ones posted by Brian Haywood with Let's Go Washington, and the incident in Aberdeen. And this one is one of the scary ones where it certainly seems there is a coordinated campaign behind the groups that are showing up and flipping over tables and stealing petitions, or in some cases assaulting signature gatherers. But in that case, you've got the guy gathering the signatures. These two guys come up, right? Scribble over the petitions, chase off, and then 4 guys jump out of a van and surround the guy who was just there gathering signatures. He has to pull out some mace and gets a couple of them in the eyes, I guess. Then calls police, and he's told that he's out of line because he chased after the woman that grabbed the petitions. And it's call the police for what?
I think at some point, this is where, you're going to have the United States Attorney General's office looking into this stuff, because if you have organizations that are directly undermining the democratic process in Washington State and nothing either can or will be done by our state's elected officials, because the Secretary of State's office runs our election system, but he can't enforce, he can't prosecute. The Attorney General's office, I believe, has said that they can't prosecute these types of crimes unless it's referred to them. And so if local law enforcement isn't going to do anything, then at some point it really begs the question of, when is the federal government going to start investigating organizations doing this? Because if they're going to do this for the initiative process, what about voting? What about elections? What happens when this actually gets put on the ballot and these organizations then start targeting like the voting process?
And in the meantime, Let's Go Washington is on track to have the most signatures to turn in for both of these, likely in state history. I think their goal is like 409,000. That would be kind of their bottom line. I think Haywood told me that the most ever gathered in the state for an initiative was, like 690,000. He said, we're probably going to beat that for both of these because this is fired people up.
I think that that's why we're witnessing this level of violence, political violence, because they know if it gets put on the ballot, it's going to become a political issue for the legislature because they're going to have to then decide whether to pass it themselves or let it get sent to the voters, right? And so then is going to become a political issue in November. I'm pretty sure that they've done polling and know that this is a losing issue. It's the same reason why they passed all those initiatives that they knew were going to win at the ballot and then didn't pass the ones that they thought they could actually fight. And lo and behold, they beat every single one of them except for the natural gas ban initiative, which is being challenged in court. So I think that that's what this is not an issue that people in the legislature, I think, want to touch, but it's also for a lot of organizations that are opposed this. They know that they're not going to win through the democratic process. People who know that they're going to win an election don't need to target their opponents, right? It's like if you're a race car driver and you know that you're a faster driver than the guy next to you, you don't have this temptation to sabotage his car.
To swerve into his lane, yeah.
or go mess around with the shaft or something like that.
Well, the article that you wrote, TJ, is up at thecentersquare.com/Washington. And I really appreciate you covering this and going further and getting some of those transcripts from the 911 calls. The title of the story that we've been talking about today is 911 calls report Washington initiative signature gatherers for hate speech. You decide. For now, I'm Carleen Johnson along with TJ Martinell, and this has been another episode of Washington in Focus.